You don't have to make the decision all at once to change something, but it's an invitation to really look at where is my heart and my life trying to lead me next. I get it. Like, you have a mortgage to pay, you have the rent to pay, you have to be practical. So sometimes you have to do it in phases, but you can still choose joy in that moment, because joy is the guiding force to what's trying to get your attention.
Very simple thing to start with. It's only one question that changed everything.
I find the same with people of different nationalities. When you go in, realize they're human beings. Seeking perfection is not going to exist. The greatest way that leaders can make connection is, first of all, connecting with themselves. If you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling overwhelmed, the first thing I would do
My purpose is to help professionals connect with themselves and with others. Therefore, by the end of this episode, I would love to know, do you feel more connected?
Brian, I'm super excited to have you on the Core Impact podcast. And as I heard from you that you like usually to start with your clients by a short breathing technique, I would like to know if you are ready to start with 30 to 60 second breathing technique so we can connect with ourselves from the beginning.
I would love that. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's great to be with you and your community. And I love the invitation to do that. So we're going to keep this really simple. For anyone who's listening that is in a safe spot, not if you're driving, you can just do this with your eyes open. But if you are in a space that you can close your eyes, I invite you to do so. And if you're seated, just close your eyes. Just put both feet on the floor. Roll your shoulders back just to get out the cobwebs, just to feel that energy. Lift your neck up, down, to the right, to the left, and then gently just come back to center. Let your hands land in your lap, face up. And just take a nice deep inhale in through your nose. And then exhale that out through your mouth like you're blowing out 50 birthday candles. Now do another nice deep breath in through the nose. And you're going to blow that out through your mouth like there's 100 birthday candles. And one last time, deep breath in through your nose. And now there's 150 candles. And now just gently take a nice deep breath in through your nose. And you're going to hold on the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. And slowly exhale out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, take a nice deep breath in. Hold. And slowly exhale out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to do that one more time. Take a nice deep breath in. Hold. And slowly exhale out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now just gently breathe in through your nose, nice long breath. But by doing that, just place your hand over your heart. And on the exhale, I want you to think of one thing that you're grateful for in this day. It may be as simple as the cup of coffee that you had. It may be feeling the sunshine on your face. It may be that you have this moment to connect. One thing that you're grateful for. So breathe in. On the exhale, breathe that out. And now just normally breathe in and out. Know that you are safe, that you are exactly where you need to be in this moment. Your heart is open. and you are open to receive and to listen. And when you're ready, open your eyes to the room and we'll begin.
Great.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Brian.
That's great. Yes, it's something I do with all my clients. I'm certified in breath work. So I have found, it really changes the energy. There are scientific techniques that can help you with anxiety, help you with stress, and really help you just get reconnected. And it only takes 30 to 60 seconds to change that energy. So I'm glad you initiated that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you too, Brian. I would like to start with asking you, do you have a story when there was this transition, when you noticed that it is not enough to follow the success metrics, KPIs, data, and research if you want to be a true leader and then follow your intuition more?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I have a lot of stories. So maybe some of your audience will get to know me and the mission of who I am. I'll share one. There's an important piece is, my background. I grew up in Boston, United States, and I actually was a priest for 8 years. And, it was a beautiful, beautiful gift to do that. I served 4 years in a big parish and then 4 years as a private secretary, like a chief of staff to a cardinal who was appointed from the Vatican. And then I just knew in my heart that I was on a path that I was obviously being groomed at a very young age for a lot of leadership. I was at the Vatican doing a lot of different things. And, there had been so much invested in me, in education and people and expectations. And I remember in my own heart knowing that I wanted to go in a different direction. I knew I wanted to be able to love another person. I knew I wanted to bring my gifts to the world in a different way. And what I thought was going to be my life, and it was like all this kind of shiny object of things you were going forward. I just knew there was something different. And I knew I made an impact in people's lives, but could go in a different direction. And I think, that is a moment that whether you look at KPIs or expectations, I think it's something that is a big moment for individuals when you realize that, wow, I'm in a different moment than what I started out on. The expectations or the golden handcuffs I feel, whatever it may be. And it really is an invitation to step more into what brings your heart joy. And to realize that you don't have to make the decision all at once to change something, but it's an invitation to really look at where is my heart and my life trying to lead me next? And how do I need to release that? So that's a big moment for me. That was in my early 30s when I made that decision, but definitely then I was in the working world and, the private world that, definitely I found that my background enabled me to bring that intuitive sense into my work. Not always calling it that, but, in meetings, but I found I was able to really tap into that in boardrooms, meeting with clients and realizing that, to pay attention in a new way to what was happening. And it really got accelerated at that time.
Mhm. If you are enjoying the Core Impact podcast and feel inspired, let's connect on LinkedIn. You can search for my name, Omar Al Mamlouk, or click on the link in the description. I would love to hear your thoughts or collaborate on projects around mental health and well-being at workplace, inclusive leadership, inner leadership, and the future of work. Let's co-create impact together. Brian, since you're talking also about joy, and if you think about joy and following your intuition, many people might go on this path and in the end will say, if I do this, I'm gonna change my career. I might start with a new path. I might even do something that I find my purpose also there, but it might not be profitable. So how can you do both? Like do something that brings you joy at the same time, find sustainable profit in it?
So it's a great question. I mean, first of all, I mean, just going back to my own personal example, having been a priest, I was a very joyful priest. I'll be honest with you now. And that's an occupation that you didn't make a lot of money.
Mm,
So, I mean, it's interesting. I kind of went the opposite way. I was a joyful priest. I enjoyed the work. I loved being part of people's lives, but I knew in my heart that I also wanted to stand in my truth. I wanted to live in a new way, to be who I am, to express fully the gift of who I am. And so by leaving that and moving into a new area in life, it was the opposite. By following that joy, it opened up doors of a new career path and it opened up aspects. When you follow joy, it does open up and align you. I still feel that sometimes, people hold back thinking, oh my gosh, until I have everything organized, I can't make
mm,
a decision.
mm,
And I get it. Like you have a mortgage to pay, you have the rent to pay, you have to be practical. So sometimes you have to do it in phases, but you can still choose joy in that moment that, maybe you're looking to make a career path, but you're still having a kind of that 9 to 5 job that's helping. But you can look at that as this is a joy because it's helping me to build with ease what I'm seeking to do next. So it can be a hybrid, but the most important aspect is to listen to your heart, to listen to that joy, because joy is the guiding force to what's trying to get your attention. And
mm.
that's where it always will lead to the greater fulfillment.
I also remember talking about joy that you said you can, or at least this is what I understood, you can stay in a joyful state regardless what your circumstances are. And if you're talking about here as an example, someone who's working in a 9 to 5, and even if they are starting with something else, but how can they still be joyful also during their working time, regardless of work circumstances?
So this is, I've spent so much of my time, for someone who's changed careers, I've spent so much of my time helping others in their career and working with teams. So here's the thing, you know, we think of joy that you're always going to be happy, right? Like it's easy to be joyful when everything's flowing with ease, everything, the money's flowing in, you're healthy, everyone around you is happy, your relationships are great, the weather's great. Yeah, it's great and easy to have faith and joy, just everything is great. But where the real test of living in joy is when there are those challenges, because that is where you need to lean in and choose joy a little bit more. So for example, if someone's really struggling in their job and you're like, oh, I'm my this is just there's something off, I'm just not enjoying it anymore. The boss is a little more challenging, the work isn't great. There's a couple colleagues that I just find very gossipy. I don't enjoy working with them. Okay, it can be an invitation of the universe to say, well, maybe you need to look at something new.
Mm,
Maybe this is the chance that you've been holding back on. But you still have the power to choose joy as you go to work every day. For example, you can say, I am going to choose joy because I'm going to listen to something inspirational on my way to work that ignites something within me as a podcast, rather than just listening to music or the news. Listen to something that uplifts you. So that brings you joy. When you're there at work, you can take moments and say, and feel into, even if you take 30 seconds of like, you know, I'm feeling that I am already living in a beautiful new way of how I'm doing my work and where that next place is. You can be joyful in just putting a smile on it going into a meeting rather than going into saying, oh, here I go again. You can choose joy of putting a smile on and having a conversation with someone saying, oh, how's the day going? To go out of yourself. Those small shifts creates an energy around you, but within you that keeps you in that energy of joy and looking it outward, not waiting for everything to be perfect. Because if you wait for everything to be perfect, it's not going to happen, but you can bring joy in those small moments. And that is what keeps you connected and opens up the flow of what you're trying to seek next.
Mhm. And that will shift your reality, as I also remember from you.
Yes, absolutely. It certainly does. And it's not easy. You might have to do it 100 times. You go in there, there are people that are just going to drive you crazy. There will be people that will just, like as soon as they open their mouth, you can start to feel it. That's a gift. That's a gift because they're teaching you something about yourself.
Mm,
It really is. It says more about you than it does about the person. I'm
mm,
not saying their behavior may be off, but the way you're responding to it, you have the
mm,
power to lean in differently. So yeah,
mm,
it does change your reality.
mm. Brian, also I'm curious to see, because you worked with the professionals, like,
Hmm.
and you are working with CEOs and leaders in general, and leaders on different levels. You can be a leader also as a professional. But what
Absolutely.
is the one thing, or what is the inner work? Because I remember also you mentioned that. What is the inner work that each leader must do?
First of all, the most important aspect of any leader that I've worked with, and again, you can redefine the title of leader. Whether it doesn't always mean, oh, it's the CEO or the executive team. No, being a leader means you can be a barista at Starbucks and be a leader. I'm a firm believer everyone has the born gift to be a leader within them. It's just about being nurtured to do that. And I think we have to redefine what that means about energy, of being leadership. But the most important piece of being a leader is your presence. It's that
Mm,
simple. It's your presence and your energy and how you show up. I don't care if you're CEO of a major company or, as I said, you're working as a barista. Your presence, how you make eye contact, how you engage, how you bring yourself into where you are, no matter what you're doing, is the key, is the absolute key. For example, there's a gentleman, I lived in the city of Lausanne, Switzerland for almost 2 years. And there was a gentleman there that used to wash the windows. This man used to go around and he was like, that was his business. He would wash the windows on buildings. This man had so much joy. He would be whistling. He'd be doing the different windows outside cafes and buildings. And it was incredible. The window washing. A small man who was probably around 60 years old, that had been his livelihood. He had immigrated in, but he had so much joy in washing windows and taking pride in how it looked. It was amazing. And you
mm,
would watch him. You'd sit in a cafe and you'd watch him outside washing different windows. And you would see people on the sidewalk engage with him, smile after they walk past him. So your presence is your greatest power. And that is what I really enable leaders of any level to say, your presence changes everything to an organization in your work. Everything.
mm. Do you have an example of a leader that you worked with, how their self-reflection and understanding themselves could then lead to the shift in the whole organization that they are working?
Absolutely. I worked with this one gentleman. He was a pharmaceutical executive, a very, very big pharma company. And it was interesting. This was I think it was like during COVID or after COVID, when people were still working virtually, and he led a very big global team. And he said to me at one of the sessions, he said, Brian, I'm really struggling with the team. And he said, I want to do something. We have this big meeting. I don't want to just check in about our projects and our pipeline development and, everyone reports on where things are at. I just feel there's something that's off. And I'm trying to think what we could do. And so I said to him, I said, it's simple. I said, for your first session, when you go in, you begin the session by saying, we're going to do something a little different today. And I invite you all to be open to this.
Mm,
What I want every single person to do is to reflect about something that they are grateful for in their work. And if you also want to share something that you're grateful for in your life, you can also add on to that. and every person can just go when they're ready. And so he said, I want to begin this meeting differently because work is such a big part of it. Let's hear what we're grateful for. And I simply told him, I said, just say, you will begin so people can think. So what happened from that, he responded, I remember he emailed me the day that he did that. And he said, Brian, this was the most incredible event. He said, I've done more offsites and, after dinner, after work drinks and this and that. And he said, this transformed the team, the level of conversation, what people shared, and it softened the edges around certain people as well. And so that is something that I encourage any leader to do on any team. I've done it. I know someone else who just did this recently. It was the biggest, most positive feedback the company has ever had on any of their team meetings. But it elevates gratitude, as we did in our opening exercise, brings new energy. Gratitude opens the door. Gratitude ties us to joy, and it connects on a human level. And we have to remember, in work, we're humans. We have to connect and reconnect back to that energy of the human.
Brian, when you're talking, I'm thinking like how simple it could be, because you said this is the biggest positive impact it had on the organization, this small act, but it was very simple thing to start with. It's only one question that changed everything. And I think how it shows how, for example, first of all, small shifts can make big impact, and also how gratitude especially strong.
Absolutely.
Are you feeling stuck at work, disconnected from yourself or your team? If you are searching for more meaning in what you do, I am offering a free 30-minute call to help you clarify your purpose, your values, your vision, and your mission. Connect with me on LinkedIn and let's take the first step together.
Just to build on that, one of the things I've come to realize, and, there are times I succeed at this and many times I fail at this. Simplicity is the gateway to living in an abundant way of life. Simplicity really is the path. We overcomplicate things, even in work and business. I've been to more horrible strategic planning meetings in my time. I've been to so many useless meetings, as I'm sure so many people have been, and they overcomplicate. Sometimes just keeping it simple is what you need to do to shift. And we try and make it so big and we have to have these huge things. No, simplicity actually is the pathway that helps you to move forward in the moment. It really is.
Brian, now also when you were talking before about challenges and, for example, me not understanding my colleagues, etc., one of the things that could cause this is how each of us were raised and how they were taught and how they act. Even the tone of the voice could be so many things, and there's no right or wrong there. And thinking about you, that you have 3 nationalities, you've been living in so many different countries. What is your take on this? And maybe you can share some interesting stories where you see that someone coming from a different culture had a totally different approach on how you usually perceive things, but just by understanding others, it could maybe lead to lots of shifts in you.
Great question. I think one of the things that's important, no matter what the cultural differences are, because there are, the way, cultural difference have a huge impact on how people engage in a meeting, when they speak, the different roles and different aspects. But put that aside, the one thing that I've certainly seen is we're all human beings. And I think that's the part that we can't get caught up on. Oh, it's the cultural difference. Yeah, it's there. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have to eat. We all want to be loved. We all want to receive love. We all want to be respected and heard. So when you come from that place, no matter how many nationalities you're dealing with, you're just simply dealing with particulars. It's like getting a new computer. You know what I mean? You might be a Mac person, then you go to an Apple, but it's a computer. And sometimes you just have to learn the different ways of how to navigate it. But at the end of the day, you want it to do the work for you. You want it to be able to send emails, create things, and do things. So I find the same with people of different nationalities. When you go in, realize they're human beings. Rather than seeing what country they are, what, what skin color they are, what language they speak, they're a human being. We're all one. And I think that creates an immediate openness to where things are at. I think what's important and what I see as the number one way to work on that is to communicate very easily if there is a difference. Because one thing that I find that happens is, for example, when there was one time I had to work with an office from Moscow many, many, many years ago on something. And they were rough. Like and I lived in New York City for years. I'm a pretty direct person, but I found working with this particular team, they were extremely curt. Like, as you would begin the meeting and just say, "Oh, it's good to see you, da, da, da. Okay, let's begin." And I felt like, why are they so... And what I came to realize, it was just their approach to the business. But when I started to connect and see them as humans, because it can be very off-putting, right? When someone speaks a certain way, we have to depersonalize it. Some of it is just a cultural, but to realize, okay, they're just human beings. They're trying to do the same thing. But that's where it comes back to your power and your presence, and to still be true to you and how you want to show up in that meeting. So I think that's probably one of the most important things. Cultural differences have an impact, and sometimes it's easier to deal with than others, but be true to you. And if you're being true and you're able to be in that, it does help to integrate.
See, Brian, you're talking about one of the things that makes people feel that they are different, but as you said, we are all one, is the language.
Yes.
And I was just before now, I was meditating and reflecting on this. For me personally, the deepest conversations I had in my life were, of course, not all of them, but most of them were with people who speak different language. And most of the times we were, for example, someone who is mother language is Italian, Indian, Indonesian, and mine is Arabic. So we speak English, for example, which is for both of us is not our mother tongue. Or, for example, with Germans, it's not my mother tongue also. And I sometimes, even in the past, I could not really speak German that well, but when I feel that the other person wants to listen, they want to connect, we could have so many great conversations and also projects, and we could build on it so many things, although we have different languages. And I assume, maybe you can confirm this or tell me if this is something else, that is the mind. Like, for me, my mind says, in order for us to understand each other, you must know the language, and you must know the grammars, and you must. And then if this doesn't fit, then we will not be able to communicate. What do you think about this?
So, first of all, I really feel people feel you before you open your mouth. They just do. I mean, I, have been very fortunate to do so much traveling, live in a different country and different countries. And even if I don't speak the language, when you go in, I really feel your presence already speaks for you. The way you walk in, the way you smile, the way you are present, how you navigate is already starting the conversation. People feel you before you speak. And that's if you all speak the same language. People feel you. People can feel your energy. I know, I can be in a room, or you go to a dinner party or something, and And you can just feel the person right away, whether they're kind of self-focused or whether they're warm. You can just sense it by their body language, how they look at you, how they are interacting. So right away you speak before you even open your mouth. Number two, I really believe, to have to communicate in not your native language. I'm a firm believer, whatever your native language is, you will always speak, I think, at 100% at that language. That is always going to be the one you're going to feel the best way you can tell a joke, the way you're able to express yourself, the way you're able to show love. Your native language will always be your number one that you feel 100%. But there are other languages that you learn, as it's French or Spanish, that you do learn to communicate very well. And it's something that it builds a bridge. It builds a bridge to communicate with others. You don't have to be perfect. I remember hearing years ago, the number one spoken language in the world is broken English. And I think it's something that it's about trying. It's about trying to make that connection. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think for people that are rude, I think, I find for people when they're trying to speak your language, and it takes a lot of courage and it's not easy to do. And I think it has to just be received that people are trying to connect in a level.
So talking about connection, Brian, how can leaders create meaningful, authentic human connection in their work without being transactional?
So I believe the greatest way that leaders can make connection is, first of all, connecting with themselves. So that's my first invitation and challenge is leaders need to connect with themselves. That's every human being. You need to do something that is connecting you to here, connecting you to your wider purpose, connecting you to your own personal growth, connecting you to something to really help you continue to grow. Because if you're not doing that inner work and nurturing yourself, whatever that form may be for everyone, it can vary from so many aspects. It's not like there's one pathway. You have to do this meditation or you have to do this yoga practice or you have to, everyone's going to tell you what to do. No, connect in. It might be just going and taking your dog for a walk every single morning in a local park or forest, and then just pausing and being quiet outside for a few minutes and reconnecting with the world and feeling that presence of nature around you, of how that stillness is helping you to ground. So you have to begin with yourself first. Then I really believe it's bringing that into your life. I think, when the pandemic happened, I think it was one of the greatest things that ever happened in the world. Not the people that were affected or lost their lives. That is off to the side, but on the deeper human evolution, because I really believe there's a new moment of how people want to connect. This old business strategy of I'm here, you're here, I don't talk about anything, all these different norms, it's gone and it's going apart. And so being a connected leader is about coming from a place of openness, love of yourself, wanting others to feel their support and their gifts to grow. It's about being it from yourself first and bringing that and enabling others to connect by having conversations about, things besides just work, things that elevate. I think there are many organizations and leaders that are connected themselves are bringing this in. For example, I know a marketing company that brought in someone who did breath work for their whole team. And it was incredible, like what happened on the team and how it impacted people. So there's a new way of connecting.
And was it after one time or several breathing techniques?
Yeah, it was a whole session. I think they had like a whole hour session. of kind of explaining what breath work was, leading them through some longer breath work sessions, and really how it connected them individually. And then when they then went into an afternoon meeting after the breath work, they had a very different experience talking about their KPIs and going. Because what it did is it opened up their intuitive ability. You know, one of the things that I have found is our intuition is part of all of us. And in business, it gets so pushed down because we lead all of the logic. But in many ways, intuition is part of business. And we just have to be open. I think there's been so many lost opportunities in business because that little slight nudge or that idea that someone offers is really intuition trying to speak up, but fear or logic sometimes just stomps it out. But that openness creates a newness.
Brian, now we're talking about intuition. I got some examples in my mind, and I think I haven't heard this before. I'm just speaking this now out of my intuition. There is true intuition and fake intuition. And what I mean by that, as an example, because this is also part of my study now, is lots of managers, the way they hire people is they just have a talk like this, and then they see, okay, we have several candidates. What my gut feeling says, based on that, I will decide, you know? Most of the times when that happens, there are lots of biases that are unconscious that will decide which candidate will be taken. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, there are other practices that say the hiring process should be structured and there should be criteria. Based on these criteria, then you can better decide. So is it also here? Is it true how I am thinking or seeing it, like a true intuition with fake intuition? Or do you see something maybe in between or something else?
So I don't think there's anything, from me anyway, I don't think there's anything as fake intuition. So I'm going to say that. There's only one intuition, number one. So, and every single person has intuition. It's no different than when you watch, there are some children that are prodigies, right? They're classical pianists, and at age 9, they're at Carnegie Hall, and they're just this classical pianist so young. They have this skill that's beyond their years. But then there's someone else who might be 35, 45, and they're also a classical pianist at the same level, but it's taken them years to practice and to go for training. The same is for intuition. There are some people at a very young age, they're highly intuitive at a young age. It's just part of them. It's just a natural aspect. And there are others that work at that and develop that skill and growing through. So that's an important thing to remind. Every single person is intuitive. You have to work it. Some of it has more natural, some of it you have to do there. Number two, I think, as someone who was a partner in executive search for a few years, and I led many, 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 many interviews, I feel it's a little bit of a hybrid. I feel intuition is part of that. That I think making sure that in this day and age that there is a diversity of candidates and diversity on all levels, making sure that you are seeking, your intention is to seek the best candidate, but making sure that you're looking from a wide net. And I think, intuition sometimes needs to be affirmed and reaffirmed. So you might meet with a candidate on the first interview and be like, oh my gosh, this lady is amazing. I loved her energy. I loved the way she spoke and her background, and you're all excited. And, you meet with the other candidates that day and they're good, but it was amazing. So right away, you're like, we got to hire her. That is the one we need. Well, I think it's important to go through another round of interviews to see how they do. The intuition can be tested. Oh, wow, she's still great, but I see this new area that might need some development or this. So intuition, it can still be there, but you also have to give it space to breathe and give it some time to be tested and see how it continues to flow. So that's how I would relate back to that question about fake intuition or real. There's always one real intuition, but sometimes you just have to let it percolate and grow.
Can you share a moment in your career where embracing evolution led to unexpected growth or opportunity?
Yeah. My gosh. I mean, how much time do we have? I think that's why I named when I started my company, I called it evolution, because I'm a firm believer as you evolve, so does the world around you. That's why it's named twice. And I think, one of the biggest things for me has definitely been, I think when there was an opportunity to come to Switzerland, to be there, a couple of years ago. And I think what happened was I was given amazing advice to take Fridays off and to go out and explore. And I was like, oh no, I feel I should be working 5 days a week because there's so much to do and da da da. But I listened to that advice. There was something inside of me that was like, it felt good. I'm going to try it. And what that did is it opened me up. It opened up a new sense of adventure. It opened up a new sense of, seeing things and developing, going on hiking and going around and exploring. And it evolved me to be in a new energy, in a new space with my work. It really did. And I have to say that had a huge impact on how I now look at what I do, where things are going, what is evolving. So with that all to say is I find that moment for me enabled me to really move away from the ego of like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I shouldn't, and to step into something that brought so much life, so much newness, so much more creativity into my expression and what I'm seeking next. And I think that's been one of the great moments, one of the great, great moments.
And how can you help professionals evolve proactively instead of reacting to circumstances, Brian?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do when I work with individuals one-on-one, I only offer, one particular program for one-on-one that I do, and it's called Enlightened Evolution. And what I love about that is because oftentimes it will lead to teams. Oftentimes leaders will connect because they are either in a new leadership position and, the company's offering them to have that support, or they're thinking about leaving their job and maybe doing something, but they're not sure what to do, whatever the circumstances are. So I often always tell individuals when they work with me, we will focus on whatever their intention is of, professionally what they're seeking to do, or maybe they're leading a new team. But I also take from a holistic point of view because you can't just look at one aspect of yourself as a leader. It affects all of you as a leader. And it goes deep because, there are parts of all of us that are still always healing and evolving. And that's one of the things I have found with leaders. The more you go into a leadership role, the more your gifts often are accelerated and brought out, but also your insecurities. And for example, I had one leader that was a CEO of a hospital, and he had to do these town halls. It was when he became CEO, bring everyone in and have these big meetings and be like the rah-rah, like, we're amazing and you're so great, and da da da. And he said, I hate this. He said, I hate it. I feel so insecure and I don't like it. So I said, well, where do you feel? Where do you feel connected? He said, I love when I walk the floors. I love when I stop and speak to the housekeeper in the hallway. I love speaking to the nurses. So I worked with him to develop a way of how he could do that naturally to build those relationships. And then when there was a larger meeting, it was not so forced. So again, it's tapping into where you feel comfortable, but also where you're seeking to grow. And I think that is one of the ways we helped leaders to evolve and also to step into their power. Again, I can't say it enough. Your presence is your power. And we
uh,
forget that. And that's where
uh.
your energy is going to be ignited.
You are totally right, Brian. Now, even now, having the podcast with you, I feel directly like the more I think about the questions, I might miss more important questions that I can only ask you if I'm totally present with you. And this
Yes.
is something also you were talking about evolve, like how we evolve is kind of what I understood. Also, we look more on to like to our dark sides or the things that we were not aware of and our insecurities too. And this is something that by time there are people who know me and they kind of praise me in a way that yeah, you are evolving or you are growing, etc. But actually, the more I dig deep in myself, the more I see that there are more things to work on. Um, yeah. So
Always.
that that's something that I liked about and I
I
wanted
think,
to reflect on.
yeah, I think it's, there's one thing, we think, oh, when I finally get this, particular part of my life healed or worked on, I'll be all set. Well, no, as soon as you finish one thing, there's always going to be another thing that comes up. Or there's going to be, maybe there's one particular issue in your life, whether it's finance or something like that, okay, now I'm doing really well. But there might be another layer of it that comes up, in a
Uh,
different form. There's always invitations for more healing and growth. And it goes back to what I said, when you focus on some of that inner work and realize that you're always evolving. You're always
uh,
evolving. And
uh,
and that's the gift of it. That's the
uh.
gift of it.
I remember in, at this time, I had so many people that I know, professionals that are on either call it career break or career alignment, or they want to change and use. This is one of the key aspects of you, what you focus on with your clients. What is your three top advices for people who are thinking of career change?
Mm. So the first advice that I would say, if someone is feeling that they are in a career or that this is just not bringing them the same joy, or maybe they still love the work, but they feel there's something not there, just to acknowledge it,
Uh,
just to acknowledge it. And one of the things that happens is, just to be aware that if you're feeling fear, if you're feeling, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, you don't have to figure that out. The ego wants you to keep, oh my gosh, you can never change. Like, you know what
uh,
I mean? You have stocks in the company. You have this. How would you do this? Oh my gosh, you have a child going off to university next year, blah, 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 blah. But in the inside, you're like, I feel something's off. So you have to just realize it's okay. That's number one. Just recognize that, wow, okay, I'm feeling a little fearful. I don't know where that is, how that is. That is okay. The second thing I would certainly say is take action while you're still in the position that you currently are, that you can explore with someone like me. That's a lot or, maybe there's a sense of working with a therapist, or maybe there's someone in your life who's a great friend that did change careers. Take action and have an open conversation. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm nervous about. This is what I would maybe like to do. When you voice something out, it frees you. It really
uh,
does. It frees you. It frees you from your mind constantly thinking and causing traps and doubts and, oh my gosh, don't open the door. You don't know what's going to happen. Oh, all this drama. So by talking it out, it frees it and it gives it space to kind of land. And oftentimes that helps you to begin to process. And that is what will help you see what the next step is. Maybe it's a sense of working with someone or going on ChatGTP to just play around with putting your resume in and saying, gee, here's all my skills and gifts, but I would love to go in this industry. Create a resume just to see what it would look like. Wow, it could be inspiring. So it's small shifts. And the last thing I would certainly say is if you are feeling that and you're thinking about whether starting a business or you want to change a job or something's just off, you have to trust the signs that are showing up for you to walk a new path because it will continue, and you have to trust the signs and pay attention to them. So for example, it may be that you are, on a plane and the person who sits next to you starts speaking about their work and it's in an industry that you haven't thought about, but there's a lot of alignment. So it's a sign that you start looking into that. Wow, that could be interesting. I never knew this company existed. It may be all of a sudden, if you're on Instagram or YouTube, a video shows up that is speaking about, something that really relates to where you are. It can also come up in a form of all of a sudden you may start seeing North Carolina everywhere, that, someone mentioned about North Carolina, this or this. It might be the universe is trying to say, look at North Carolina, look at opportunities. Intuition, the universe, isn't always logical. And if you're just in that space of trusting the signs, just explore and see. It's very important because you are being guided, and signs are going to come through people, through different things that will help be there for you. And it doesn't mean they're always going to land to the job or the place, but it's helping you to tap into something and to see what could be next for you.
So Brian, first of all is accept, then take action, even if it's small. And the third one is look for the signs that the universe or your intuition is telling you. Okay.
Absolutely. Because when you take actions, and again, it could be, putting your resume in ChatGTP just to say, maybe you're an engineer, but maybe you want to go into a different kind of work. So you can play around, have fun with it. And that's the most important thing. Put it in and say, create a resume based on my background for this kind of work. Wow. That's when you start to feel you're like, is this really me? What does this mean? And then signs will show up, like all of a sudden you could be on the subway and you could see someone come on with a bag, that has the name of a company on it that for some reason just catches your attention. And, the tagline of what it is, it's like, huh. And you look it up and it starts to ignite something else and you start looking at things. Follow those signs, follow the signs. And you'll know it's for you because people ask, well, how do I know it's the sign? Because you're going to feel it. There's no if, ands, or buts. You're just going to feel something that just feels different. It's like if someone just said the most beautiful word to you that, when someone gives you a compliment, you feel it. Like it's like a warmth that comes in your heart. That's exactly what it's like when you get a sign. It's a small warmth that feels different. And that's when you know to take a look at it.
And it's a great reminder to feel or to remember to be playful, to experiment, to just do new things and be like, take it in a light way wherever you want to explore, right? Because often we come back to this, I have to, I must, it should be like this, but you can always explore even with the uncertainty.
Yeah. And I've been the king of totally blocking things because of it has to be this, it has to be this, it has to be this. Well, no, like, I mean, sometimes it isn't that way. Just have fun with it and feel into, you know, how you want to feel, how you want to feel. Maybe you're in a job right now that you're like, oh, I'm so tired of strategically planning everything, and you really feel you want to be more creative. You want to have more interaction with people. So feel into that. Like, so, even if you're working right at that job, a great way you want to have more interaction with people, well, walk around more and talk to people, take an interest and even set up a Zoom with someone just for 15 minutes to say, hey, how's that project going? You mentioned this in a meeting. I want to check in, see how you're doing, what's new. You know, you're doing it for you because you want to have more interaction. That's what you're seeking. What's next? So use what's right before you, create it and have fun with it. And it will just bring all things into a new alignment.
While you are listening to the Core Impact podcast, please take a moment to pause and share with me. How do you feel? Are you enjoying the conversation, feeling inspired, or something else? I would love to know your feelings in the comments.
Brian, also, I'm curious, while working with leaders on different levels, what is the biggest blind spot that most leaders have, especially if they want to evolve, they want to be future ready?
Great question. I would say there are probably two that I have encountered that's a common aspect. One is a sense of perfection, that they feel that, there's a perfectionism that oftentimes, especially people who are big leaders, that, oh my gosh, I have to have this right. I have to do this right. Or they're trying to prove themselves, over and over and over again. So that is probably one of the biggest issues that I find many leaders will face, when they get into something, a sense of perfection, a sense of they have to keep proving themselves, especially if they, report to a board or they're leading a big team. That's number one. Number two, I would say behaviors of others. So what do I mean by that? I would say for many leaders is dealing with the behaviors that they often encounter among other team members or people they're leading or executives that can be challenging. So, for example, I had a client just recently who's very senior in a very, very, very senior big role, and was sharing with me about this other person that is just a horrific bully, that is just been so challenging that even other executives kind of bow down to the individual, just the way they deal with things, how they deal with things. And she really is struggling because she is not tolerating it. And, one of the things that came out is, she was doubting herself of, am I doing this the right way? You know what I mean? That's probably the biggest issue that leaders have to deal with. Sometimes the other personalities that can be jarring, and I think that is something that as you enter into a more leadership role, or it doesn't matter, again, going back to the barista, you're going to deal with different personalities. It is how it affects you. And I think that is one thing to realize, that when you're in work and leadership, personalities and energies will affect you, but they don't have to take root in you. They're usually showing you something about yourself, and they're actually inviting you to rephrase how to look at that, either to see that, wow, they're very wounded, this is their issue, and to get the advice. And, sometimes working with me, oftentimes that's a big part of my work. They say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? Is there an insight here? And it's not always so much about the person or what's there. Oftentimes when I spend time with them, it's more about them, that there's something that goes back to when they were a teenager and something that they felt by a teacher or something that's why it's activating so much. So it's being aware of personalities and behaviors. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
Brian, I love the way you answered. And so mainly it's about two things. First of all, being aware not to be perfectionist. And the other one is to be aware of how others' behavior affect you, right? And not to first of all, to be okay with it, what I understood, but not to let it affect you so much because it's kind of reflecting what is inside of you already.
Absolutely.
I think what I struggled with the most also talking with some friends, professionals, especially those who have senior positions, and is to convince them with the first one actually, like how not to be a perfectionist. And sometimes when you talk like this, at least for me, it's kind of okay. So like, is it okay to lack something or not to be, in a top professional level or to do everything in the best way possible? Like what we do if we are not if we are not seeking perfection, then what do we want to do? This is a good thing. So it's how do you answer this, especially when clients ask you such questions?
So I think my advice, if someone said about perfection, seeking perfection is a waste of your energy, your time, your gifts. Seeking perfection is not going to exist. It just isn't. So I think we have to shift that as a sense of I am seeking to bring the greatest alignment to my work. I am seeking to bring my expertise and the fullness to what I can bring. Because if you go in seeking perfection, you're never going to reach that mark. You're just not. There's always going to be something that is off. Always. So instead to go into, I'm going in here and giving it my intention is to bring the greatest excitement, the greatest part of my gifts, the greatest alignment and expertise to this, and realizing that it will always keep growing. For example, I had to, about a week or so ago, put together a significant proposal for very big clients. My background is, professional fundraising. And so I do a lot of things for organizations, helping them be aligned on that. So this organization said, we had a great meeting and said, oh my gosh, what would be so great is if you could put together a proposal and really show me what would year one look like in the next few years. And, right away, I'm like, absolutely. But I'm like, I find those kind of projects heavy sometimes. You know what I mean? Even though I've done them and I have resources. So I had to switch that because what was happening at the beginning when I was trying to put it together, it was in the perfection mode. Oh, they have to know this. They have to see this. They have to see this. Da, da. Instead, when I stepped away and I really focused on what do they need? What is a newness of how they can approach this? When I started to work on the document, it flowed with greater ease over 2 days because I wasn't seeking to be perfect or they see me as the perfect person to hire. Or it was a sense of, here's what I believe where you are. Here's what I know can help and help you go in a better place. And let's have a conversation to see how this aligns. When I sent the proposal, I felt a sense of joy. I felt a sense of healthy pride. Wow, this is well put together. I feel it encompasses the energy I want people to feel with expertise, with things to think about, with an openness for further discussion. Changes the whole thing. Because other times that I tried to write proposals, I remember one other one I had to do a few years ago. I was so angry doing it
Um,
because I was so frustrated. And why do they want this? And I have to prove that I have the information. No, it's really the way you approach it.
hmm. I love how you said this, and my take on it, Brian, is when you are self-focused. This is also something you mentioned before. When I focus on myself, then you become perfectionist, and this is like always comes together, and this leads to anger after and frustration, etc. But instead, you can just when you say the need of others, you're not self-focused. You're focusing on how can you help others, and then you can bring also very high quality service wherever it is, and also you feel the sense of joy.
Absolutely. So I had to do another proposal for a client that I'm working with, helping them to do something significant in some fundraising in a new way. And I had to put this proposal, together based on this information. It's not my favorite thing to do. I love to write. I really know I have a gift of communication, verbally and writing, but it takes, it's a lot. And so instead I had to reframe for myself. I said, what I'm writing here is words that can connect and energize who will receive this. So it wasn't just trying to get facts and figures in and, how we're going to sell it. No, I want this to be a way of connecting for the good of what this is trying to do. So by doing that, it changes from perfection of like, I got to get this document right so it sells and do this to, no, I want this to connect. I want this to connect at the human heart, but also and by going that way with ease, it was able to bring the expertise and all the information into it as well. Changing that approach. That can work for anything, personally or professional.
Brian, also let's stay in the future, and I have a question here. How can you help leaders prepare themselves and their teams, especially with the rapid changes? We mentioned AI, for example, while staying grounded in purpose and joy.
So first of all, I think there's a lot it would be fun to have this podcast in 5 years with you or in 10 years, because I just think it's going to be so different in terms with AI, I think there are so many things that we can't even anticipate how it will impact work and all of that. And I personally, I think that's exciting in many ways. Like I really do. That's evolution. So I think it's something to be aware of. But going back to leaders and teams, I really feel the organizations and leaders and teams that put attention on the focus that you're human first and connecting with the heart is going to have a huge impact. And people might be thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but I'm working asset management or I'm an engineer and like that is not part of the world I live in. Okay. But as a leader, you can make it part of your world and you will never have to say that, but you do it by your energy. So I really feel the greatest way that I'm able to help individuals do that is to look at what is it they're trying to do in their work? What is it they're trying to accomplish? Are they trying to build? Are they trying to raise money? Are they, they're experiencing issues? Great. We have to look at the facts of what it is. But then we get into, okay, where's the human element of this? How are you connecting on the human level? And I think, there's certain ways you can do that through, retreats or conversations. I bring people through different aspects of that to help them to look at things in a new way. So for example, I've done some different board retreats and, for organizations. And the first thing that I do, they often will bring me in because they need to raise a lot of money or, they want to build a capital campaign or whatever the issues are. It's great. But I've also served as a chair of a major board. I've been on board. So I know sometimes the personality dynamics that go into those environments. So the first thing to do is to get back to, why are you there? And who is this impacting? So for example, at one board retreat that I did, I was leading it in because they were really at a cross moment. I said, every decision we speak about today, from financial budget planning to strategic goals to what are the KPIs that are going to align with this, who is this affecting? And I actually did an exercise on, it's like looking at your customers. And it was a sense of, they have a family. What are they doing? Who are they? And made it human. Because I think one of the biggest issues is there are lots of decisions made in businesses and they forget the people where it's impacting in their lives. It comes focused on dollars. It comes focused on output. And those things all have its place. But if you put it back on, why are you doing this? How it will impact in that human dimension and elevate. If it's not there to elevate, I think it's useless. I don't care what it is. If it's an app, if it's technology, whatever it is, if everything should elevate the human condition for the greater good. And when you bring it back to that moment as a team and where that is, that changes everything and evolves in a new way.
And you talk about elevate, it means not only materially, right? It's not on the expense of either other humans or the nature, but it's right. The elevate means for the benefit of everyone.
Everything. I mean, when you elevate, I think one of the byproducts is, and I really mean this, if you elevate in the right way, with the right focus, it will elevate revenue. It will elevate, retention. It will elevate, why people want to work with you. And so it is elevating everything. And that is what you want to have.
I'm really enjoying the conversation with you, Brian. I have so many questions still in my mind. I'm just going to end with two. The first one is, for professionals who feel disconnected, overwhelmed, or stuck, what are the top 3 tips for them to connect first with themselves?
So if you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling overwhelmed, the first thing I would do, again, it ties into the kind of the thread of our conversation today, is keep it simple. Keep it simple. Develop a new practice today, if you're hearing this today, and start with your breath like we did at the very beginning. And if you made up your mind to say, you know what, every morning, I'm going to take 1 minute to do some of that breathing and to focus on gratitude. Then you do a minute before you go into work, if you're in your car, and just feel into that. Do it again in the afternoon, even if it's like in between a meeting, and you're feeling that disconnection by pausing for 60 seconds and time it in your phone. Put a reminder on, do it every 4 hours. You're already telling yourself, I'm creating space. I'm creating space to connect. And just that small action, doing that a few times during the day, is going to just remind you to pause, that you're not alone, and you can breathe in a new way. And what it does for your mind, it triggers, oh, this is a newness. This person's seeking something new. And it gets you out from the fear mind of what if, how, I don't know, I'm scared, blah, blah, blah. This person's a jerk. I can't believe I got so many messages I have to do. Blah, blah, blah. It gets you out of that into a more open space. Number 2, be courageous and speak to someone about it. Take courageous action and speak about it. And one of the things I often say, and I think this is a really important point, I want people to know this, especially in this second offering, sometimes you have to hold your cards close if you're feeling stuck, frustrated in where things are. And what I mean by that is when you're in a moment of uncertainty, you have to make sure you speak to the right individuals or individual, because everybody's going to have an opinion. And that can either cause more distress, more confusion. So, speaking to your spouse or speaking to your partner is beautiful, but they may not be the person that you need to really do the work with. They'll be there as a support. So what I encourage you is be very selective who you speak with. Because as you begin that process, you may change and do things. And they can go back, well, 2 months ago you were saying this and now you're saying this. Well, do you think that's the right thing? No. So what I encourage people is be very selective who you reach out to. Hold your cards close. Speak with someone like myself. Speak with a therapist. Speak with a very trusted, maybe you have a mentor or someone you can go to. And say that and tell them, I'm only speaking with you. I'm just beginning this process. And I think that's an important thing to do, but speak with someone. That's very important because that will open you up to see what's next. And the third thing that I would say, set a prayer, set an intention. And I really mean that, to say, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm being led somewhere else. So make that a prayer and say, I trust I'll be guided. And say, I'm stepping in faith and trust. Help guide me to where I need to be. I'm going to not control and I trust I'll be guided. You need to make that prayer or intention, how you refer to that, because it's signaling to something beyond yourself. And it really will help to guide you. That's my 3 takeaways. And besides that, just know that you're really being guided, and to realize that there's something greater that your soul and life want. You don't have to have it figured out. It will come to you if you take those 3 things.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. I mean, I love the conversation. There are many things that I'm going to take with me. I like to reflect on some of them. First of all, keep it simple. Yeah, I love the way also you talked about the connection with all human beings and how we are all one, and how can we just focus first on what bring us together, how many mutual things we have as humans before we look at our adversity or like how others might do or perceive things. And I love also how you talk about perfectionism, about career change tips. And I would like now, the last question actually is an open question. Is there anything that you still like to share as a final thought about evolution, joy, or connection?
So I would just end on this. There's been first of all, I just want to thank you for navigating and orchestrating very thoughtful questions. And I would say, not so much a question, but I would say for anyone who's listening, and if there's something that resonated, even if it's one point, pay attention to it. Because there's a reason why it connected. Either it brought you a peace, it brought you something new to think about. Pay attention to it and take small action from it from today. And all I can say is, if you're in a moment of trying to really be evolved into a new way, there's a reason why you found this communication. You are being guided. And to just know that in your heart. And even if it's twists and turns and why is this taking so long? And I applied for this role, I keep coming in second and it's not happening. There's a reason why it's happening. There's a great author I love, Gabby Bernstein, that said, challenges are detours in the right direction, or delays are detours in the right direction. Trust the holdups, because oftentimes when you're in a moment of trying to change, the universe is also trying to line stuff up too. And there's things. So it's a moment, but it is also for your growth as well. Just be patient, know you're being guided, and know that you're never alone in that process.
Mm. With this quote, I had goosebumps, Brian. Thank you very much again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you feel inspired by this conversation? If that's the case, please share that with me, write me a comment, and share it with a friend that you know will benefit from this podcast. Core Impact Podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other major platforms.